Welcome. It's a story about mentoring and it's connecting to evolve tomorrow's leaders through mentoring. This is the International Mentoring Community Mentoring Lounge where Doug and I get together and share some insights with you about mentoring and its application in a lot of different places. And today we're going to be looking at tomorrow's leaders from inside a workplace point of view, inside a corporate setting, a charitable setting, government setting, wherever tomorrow's leaders are being prepared. This is where we want to make a connection today. And with that, what I want to do is just have Doug is just going to share a little bit about his relationship to the international mentoring community, because that's who's hosting today's presentation. I'll do the same kind of introduction, and then I'll come back and sort of lay out where we're going, what we're going to be talking about today. So, Doug, you want to just share who you are at this point in time with IMC?
I certainly, I certainly can. So I'm Doug Lawrence, and I'm a co-founder of the International Mentoring Community, and I fulfill a role as director of practice with IMC.
Yeah, and Stephen Hobbs here. I am the other co-founder. This is a co-legacy project on behalf of Doug and myself, our contribution in being for the world with the planet from the whole. And I serve in the background a little bit more around the certification elements of IMC, and then walk to the front occasionally and do education-related work as well. But today I am going to lean into Doug, and I've already prepared him. I gave him fair warning. It's coming, Doug. And the reason being is I want to tap into his corporate charitable experiences in the organization of work. And in particular, this notion of how do I bring the story of mentoring forward when it comes to looking at succession development. And what I said to him is, okay, let's tap into this and take a look at this, because if we're going to evolve tomorrow's leaders through mentoring, then there's this succession development approach that is unfolding in different ways. That would be fair, right, Doug? Is because there's so much has happened in the workplaces in the last little bit that this whole succession development process, whether planning, managing, leading, evaluating, is all shifting. Yet to improve focus and strengthen those aspects of succession development, you came to me the other day and said, you know what? I think mentoring, if we really dug into mentoring and we really helped all these organizations to really look at mentoring as a way in which to, improve focus, strengthen. Okay, that's what we were talking about. And I said, well, let's create a presentation about that. And he said, sure. And I said, okay, well, if we're going to do that, then what we have to do is we have to really help those who are listening in today to go, okay, great. What is succession development? Because not everyone really understands it. I know I played with it quite a bit when I was doing some of my corporate related work, but Doug, you're still in the middle of this. So do you want to help us understand what is succession development and its importance in organizations?
Yeah, I certainly can. So succession development is where the organization has identified prospective leaders, for lack of a better choice of words, to fulfill leadership roles in the organization at a particular period of time. And the succession development part is that it's recognized that there may be a knowledge, skill, and ability gap, and mentoring can be used as a means to close that as part of the succession development process.
Okay. And there are different elements to the succession process. I sort of hinted at there's the planning of it. evaluating of it, the managing and leading, because there's actually a few people involved with succession development, the succession management. There's the person themselves who are going through it, the manager leader around connecting with that, the HR department or a succession development department, that depending on how big it is. So in your experience, have you done more bigger corporate versions of this or smaller charitable organizations where everyone has to sort of pitch in and do a little of everything? What's your experience with succession development?
I've done both, and largely because I identified it as a need. They were like a ship with no rudder. They were just wandering aimlessly, and by no matter the size of the organization, if we were able to identify the positions, the gap that we had to fill to get somebody ready for that particular position, and then go through and provide them the required training that they need in order to step into that position with minimal downtime, so to speak, then that's the path that we would take.
So the story of mentoring, and you brought it forward in our conversations, and thus we're here today. What was it about the mentoring story that caught the imagination of some of the clients that you were interacting with?
Well, it was once you identified a position, so a function that needed to be performed, and you identified prospective candidates, the mentoring could be used to close that competency gap. For that's probably the best word to use, was the knowledge, skill, and ability, or competency. Was mentoring was seen as a means to be able to close that gap.
Okay. So then today's presentation really is helping those who are leaning into succession development, whether as a person going through succession. It's good to understand it through, I believe, what we're presenting, because then you can ask for a mentor, right, to help you along. You might be a manager leader who can offer some support in mentoring, being a mentor for the person, and or figuring out who could support that person as a mentor. You could be the person who is running this succession planning, evaluating, managing, leading program as a whole, and benefit from some of the things that we're sharing as mentoring. Mentor is sort of a guide on the ride. I think that would be fair, looking at it from those different perspectives. Is there anything other perspective you would want to add into this, or does that cover it?
No, that covers it.
Okay. So then what we're going to do is say, all right, let's take a look at it through 5 lenses. And there's 2 here, 2 more, and then 1. So we've got 3 more slides to share with you. So I want to just also let you know, this is not like a deep PowerPoint presentation or anything. These are just for us to keep moving forward. So this focus on succession development to prepare future leaders to ensure their continuity and retain valuable knowledge, is that the main reason that you've been doing your mentoring into corporations, or is there any other fine tuning to that focus statement there from your perspective, Doug?
I would have to say that the most important thing is the succession development. So creating that learning and development environment for all employees, but more importantly, as part of that succession process, it's identifying the function or the position, and then identifying potential leaders that could go into those positions.
So there's a pre, during, and post element to this succession development that you're hinting at here?
Correct.
Okay. Do you use other words when you share this notion of pre, during, or post? I'm just curious. I don't know if I've ever asked you this, so I just came to mind. Do you use other words?
Well, some of the words that I use is knowledge transfer, as an example, is one that I use, where the knowledge, we need to know what knowledge is needed to perform this particular function, and where is it today? Where is it stored today? Because we're going to have to capture it somehow and have it as part of the closing the gap, so to speak, of where this person is and where they need to be in order to be successful in their new position once they get into that position.
So that could be almost pre-gap, through the gap, post-gap.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing sometimes when you have these conversations, even though Doug and I have been working together for, I don't know, 6, 7 years now, I still go, hang on a minute, I don't know if I ever asked them that, or we do get these things happen sometimes. And that was an example of it, folks. And guess what? I'm thinking that's something that would happen in your succession development conversations as well, is looking for the words that make the most sense to help person navigate succession development. True?
True.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the next point that I think is worth making is to leverage the elder wisdom. Now, Doug used this term, but I use this term a lot because I speak about younger, older, elder. And I really appreciated when he came back and he said, let's talk about the elder wisdom in corporations. But Doug, if I may, can I just share a little bit about how I'm using those terms? Because I think it'll help lay the foundation for what you're going to share here about connecting elder wisdom and mentoring and succession, okay? The way that I use younger, older, elder is, as a younger, there's a point in time where you self-identify, I think I'm an older now. It's not something that tears you down or hinders you. It's just, okay, I think I'm at a point where I moved from younger to older. Great. All right. But one of the things that I've learned is it's not for you as an older to go, well, now I'm going to become an elder and this is how I'm going to do it. Because I always and always share, it's the community who identifies you as the elder in that community. So for me in workplaces, it would be the workplace, it would be those who are interacting with you who might give you the designation of elder. Sometimes they call you, well, you're the senior planner or the master planner or whatever it might be. They use other terms. But indirectly, they're sort of saying, we're recognizing you as an elder. And I just wanted to make that distinction because Doug and I also made sure that we don't use one of the terms that everyone banters around, reverse mentoring. We don't use that term. And we come at it more from the younger, older, elder kind of storyline. And that's why when he brought it forward, leverage elder wisdom, I went, great, let's keep it. But I wanted to just share my perspective on that. So what's the importance of this statement here from your experience about leverage the elder wisdom to guide younger employees?
Well, the most important thing out of that, just the elder wisdom, comes from working with junior managers and that help them with various situations that they're going to encounter. And using mentoring processes and concepts, you guide them through what that situation may look like, given how you deal with it. And so that's the big thing with this, with the elder wisdom, is to be able to create that succession development process that allows for that to take place.
So then one of the things to help those listening in is that the person who's going through the succession, they could be an elder as well to get to that point, being recognized, and we want to prepare you to be an elder within the organization. Therefore, we might say to you, why don't you learn how to become a mentor? That would be something that would be a bold move on some corporations' perspectives, would it not?
Yes.
And have you had, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm actually working with an organization right now that is taking its elders and it's providing them the training they need in order to be successful mentors, because what they've been able to establish is that a lot of their senior people, a lot of their elders don't want to leave. They want to be able to do something meaningful. And what is meaningful to them is helping the younger people to basically to prepare them for the role of becoming a leader in the organization.
Are you finding quite a bit of that? Because there is that whole storyline out there. Yeah, you get a little older, there's a point in time we're going to say goodbye to you. Or are we finding, or sorry, you finding that certain corporations are keeping their older, help them become elders around?
Not as much as I would like to think, and there's still a pretty sizable gap of organizations that are not doing that. And in fact, in a lot of cases, there's organizations that do not have a succession plan in place. In fact, I think the number is like 80 some odd percent of organizations globally today do not have a succession plan in place.
Do you happen to know what it might be about them having a mentoring program? Have you ever come across a statistic that talks about how many corporations actually have a mentoring program?
No, I know there's stuff out there, but off the top of my head, I
Yeah,
can't.
I can't place it either. That's why I thought maybe I just ask you, because you made a
Yeah.
really great point. Like, if they're not doing that much succession development, are they doing the mentoring aspect that would be critical in a sense, to supporting value transfer, knowledge transfer, those kind of things. So I think maybe what we'll have to do is dig around and maybe come back and do a little presentation about what we're finding around that point. How's that sound?
So it sounds good. There's just one more thing I would like to add is that in a lot of cases, some of the organizations have a succession plan in place, but they don't do anything with it. And so it sits on the shelf. And then, as I used to say, we blow the dust off of it once a year and we go, okay, have the names changed? No. Okay, how about the functions? No. Okay, we're good for another year, when they need to keep. It's a continuous process, and you need to come back to the table and go through, okay, what's changed in the organization. And you can't tell me that there hasn't been changes, because I know most organizations have a lot of change going on today.
So I would encourage anyone who's listening in, if you've got a way to help us understand, in your organization, are they doing succession planning, or do they blowing the dust off it when they need it? Are you using a mentoring program, and are you using succession development with mentoring? I think it'd be great if you could put it in the comments section. And if you don't want to put it in a public facing, you can always send it to us privately. And one of the best ways to do that is wealthmovement.com, and you'll find that address around this video /contact, and you can send a private message. I'll get it, and then I can bring it forward. And when we make another update video around mentoring and succession, I can bring it to the foreground, and we'll find other ways to honor what you share with us. So that's great. Okay, why don't we take a look then at the next 2 points that we want to raise, okay? And these ones sort of take it in a slightly different direction, but it emphasizes the points that we're attempting to make here. So think of sort of foundational elements. So integrate mentoring into succession planning, okay, for that smoother transition. Now, we've hinted at it, but Doug, from your experience as a consultant in this area, incorporating mentoring into the succession planning, the planning process itself, is there 1 or 2 points that you want to raise? Now, this would be for those who may be in the HR function or the succession development function, and maybe not using mentoring right now to go, oh, okay, I see what Doug's saying, and that might help me to improve my practice. What would be a couple of things you would want to share with that group?
The first would be the first line where it says integrate mentoring into succession planning. Do it. Just do it. And because succession planning needs to have that critical element, the mentoring piece needs to be part of it in order for the knowledge to be transferred. And because I just keep thinking of employees that I've worked with that for the most part had no one to work with them, and so there was always this glazed glass over eyes where they were having to deal with stuff that they had no clue whatsoever on how to approach it for the benefit of the employee and for the organization. And had they have had mentoring in place, it would have resolved that.
Okay. Is there anything of a dire warning other than do it for the HR department? Is there anything you would want to share about if you don't do it, this is what could happen?
Well, and if you're going to do it, make sure that if you don't have experience with the implementation of a mentoring program, and for actually backing it up a little bit, if you have no idea or no concept of how to link mentoring to your organization, so it becomes a customized approach and all of that. If you don't have that, get some help to be able to, on top of taking your homework for today, which is to integrate mentoring into your succession planning process. If you don't have any of that, you need to, as part of that conversation with whoever you bring in, get a deeper understanding of what this is all about.
So really the bottom line is make sure you understand what mentoring is about. Mentorship, mentor, mentee, mentoring, right? Concepts, practices. And that's what the international mentoring community can do to support you. If not, get a hold of Doug, and there is a connection to Doug. He's someone who could help you sort all of this out. Again, I don't do that so much anymore, but Doug is constantly having conversations with groups. So make sure that you really get to understand what this is about and the use of the terms and the concepts and practices that go with that. So why don't we take a look at this next one, because this is where I believe a lot of people fall flat or drive off a cliff. All right. I've been in quite a few organizations and in my latter part of my career, and I just don't see elders celebrated. The persons, if you're going to recognize those elders as elders and help them do what you're asking them to do, and you don't celebrate them, recognize them, honor them, it can fall flat as well. Is because if you're not appreciated, you sometimes don't always, maybe I won't do quite as good a job as I would want to. However, I would hazard to share that most elders are going to do the best by those that they're interacting with. Because if they're recognized as elder, they're not going to shortchange those they're interacting with. They're going to find a way in which to be with that person. But dear persons who organize succession development, using mentoring, supporting your elders, the senior managers, leaders, celebrate them. Anything you want to add around this one from your own personal experience, or, hey, please remember, do this?
Well, it's just the one organization keeps coming to mind where they're trying to do everything they possibly can so that they can create a function where their elders who are at a time in their career, at a time in their life where they could move on, and they have chosen to want to stay and be part of preparing tomorrow's leaders. And So now it's up to the organization. It's like a tennis match. The ball's back in the organization's side of the court to be able to come up with what's a strategy, what's a plan look like for us to be able to leverage the elders' wisdom and knowledge in order to for the benefit of our existing employees.
So what's really happening then is we're basically suggesting at the beginning of the day, during the day, at the conclusion of the day, is make sure that you build mentoring legacy. There is a legacy that you can create, right, through the work that you're doing from a succession development perspective that has an organization flavor, manager, leader, succession department, right? The recipients of the elder's wisdom, the mentor, there is legacy, there is ripple effect that's going on there. And I think from my point of view, where I do some of my sharing is managers and leaders in supporting others don't necessarily have a legacy. The elders who are doing what they're doing and being asked to share their valuable knowledge and skills don't necessarily see that as a legacy. So one of the things we want to encourage to this presentation from an IMC point of view is that mentoring as legacy. I think that's a really important piece, no matter which angle, which lens you're looking at this presentation today, mentoring as legacy. Any thoughts that you have around that, Doug?
No, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. And, if I walk away from an organization, if there is nothing other than through mentoring, I've helped create a legacy in the organization, then for me, then that's been time well spent.
Yeah, and I also want to suggest to persons is what we're talking about here, mentoring and legacy and all that, it's not culture, it's a movement. All right. It's the movement of legacy, the movement of mentoring. It's meant to be woven in. It's not something you put up on the shelf and go and point at and go, look, we've done it. It's just there. And it's just an aspect of all that moves when you within your organization. Now, I think there are persons who would say, from a culture point of view, as an artifact point of view of our organizational work, do we or don't we have mentoring is an important question, because if you can say you do, then you have the movement of mentoring. Do we or don't we have legacy? Oh, we have the movement of legacy. And when you have this notion of mentoring as legacy, this movement of it, oh, that is a different kind of organization. True?
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
Do you have an example of where that is starting to unfold? You may not have done it directly, but do you have a sense? Because I have one that I want to ask of you because of your involvement with them, but I just, anything come to mind?
The one that comes to mind is it's a organization that we actually went in and they did a culture assessment on their own. They did a 360 feedback to determine whether the employees were even interested in beginning the journey. And it came back, I think it was 86% said, let's go for it. And so their idea behind that was mentoring was going to be play a significant role in the development of employees through mentoring, and it was a combination of formal and informal mentoring. And so they've done that, and the pilot was successful. So then we did a full-blown implementation, and the feedback that I've gotten has been that it was the smartest move they ever made.
Okay. And I just remember is that you've also gotten involved with a couple of um, I'll call outside of Canada mentoring programs as well. So there must have been some deepness to those organizations creating opportunities for mentoring of entrepreneurs, that there would be very much a mentoring as a legacy connection with them as well. Would that be true from your experience of those? I'm not going to put you on the spot to say which organizations they are, but you've found that because with the entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs, and being able to serve as an elder, as mentor to them. Would that be true?
Yes, that's definitely true. And I think of in particular the one that sort of stands out for me was there were a number of opportunities within the organization as it was evolving as a entrepreneur venture, that there were lots of opportunities for the sharing of knowledge and for the mentoring process to be part of where they were going to go.
Okay. So as we are sort of getting closer to a bit of a close here, I just want to remind us that there was 5 points that we shared here today, but the idea here was to evolve tomorrow's leaders through mentoring, is to just remember that, and especially in the succession development approach. How do you improve focus and strengthen the succession development through the lens of, okay, who's helping to organize it? Maybe the managers and leaders of the person you're wanting to support, the person themselves who is getting the support to become a mentor. But there is one aspect of this that leans into my world a little bit more. And that's for those of you who are transitioning out of being an elder, in a sense, a mentor in an organization, and you've benefited from what's going on, and you've done the transition into your next 50. If you ever would like to look at mentoring as legacy, as a project around something that you know, the stories you'd like to share, the contributions that you'd like to know, that's one of the places I can help out. Now, Doug can have those conversations, but he also still is in workplaces, and he can help that from that perspective. But I didn't want to lose the possibility as, oh, if I've gotten that succession support inside an organization, it's time for me to go into my next 50 because I do want to depart the organization. And you'd still like to keep that sort of rolling along. I would so enjoy having a conversation with you. So you can certainly down below is put any sort of comments that you might have around your asks. Maybe there's something that Doug and I could do a little bit more elaborating on. Like, we didn't get into here's the 10 steps to do it, because that's not what this was meant to do. This was meant to highlight these different lenses of looking at succession development, incorporating mentoring. So that's what we wanted to do today. So the core element here that we would like to leave you with is that don't put this aside and say, I'll do it another rainy day. As Doug says, don't go and blow the dust off the binder that talks about this. Is actually think truly about it in the corporate world. And if you're going to make that transitional movement into your next 50, think about this as well. That's really important. Now, Doug, is there anything else before I ask you to do the close about anything that comes to mind around this topic today?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So as is tradition for us in the international mentoring community, I bring you in, Doug gets to take you out. And what I do is I just say to Doug, okay, what's something you want to share because of today's presentation? Sort of like that last thought, and it could be a concept, it could be a practice, or it could be a combination. Once I know he's done, then I'll just say, take care, and then we'll stop the recording. So Doug, your end of thought today.
So succession development is a process that needs to be done on a continuous basis. It cannot sit on the shelf and collect dust.
Okay, so thank you and take care, everyone.
Take care.